Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi hid key facts regarding the Pulwama attack from the public, and it was because of the incompetency and carelessness of the CRPF as well as the Indian Home Ministry that led to the Pulwama attack. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi used this Pulwama attack to put blame on Pakistan to take the electoral benefit. Now, these shocking revelations have been made by none other than the former governor of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Satyapal Malik. And he has also criticized Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi of being ignorant and ill-informed regarding Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Now, these shocking revelations regarding the Pulwama attack, which happened in February 2019, in which 44 people of the Central Reserve Police Force of India were killed, and right away, without any substantial evidence or any concrete proof, the Indian authorities, being habitual of pointing fingers for cross-border terrorism towards Pakistan, put the blame on Pakistan for this particular attack, which was of course refuted by the Pakistani authorities at that very time. Now, regarding these revelations, there are certain voices which are coming from within India by the major opposition parties. Some are calling these revelations as massive, some are calling these as shocking, and some are also calling it as the indictment of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. Now, the former governor of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has also said then when he talked about this carelessness and incompetence of the Home Ministry to the Prime Minister as well as National Security Advisor, both of them asked him to remain quiet and not talk about it. Now, Pakistan's Foreign Office regarding this particular revelation has given a response. Let me quote what the Foreign Office had to say. Malik's disclosures demonstrated how the Indian leadership has habitually used the bogey of terrorism from Pakistan to advance its sham victimhood narrative agenda, clearly for domestic political gains. Unquote. It has at the same time also urged the international community to take cognizance of this matter and also asked India to answer these questions which have been raised in these revelations by the former governor of ExIIOJK. In another shocking incident, a former Muslim member of the parliament, along with his brother, were killed while they were talking to reporters on live TV in Uttar Pradesh state. And regarding this particular brutal murder, there are voices also coming, some politicians saying that this particular murder has been carried out, and they can believe so that the BJP used this murder to deflect the attention from this interview of the former governor of ExIIOJK. So about these shocking revelations, we'll be taking our guests up for discussion. In the studio, we are joined by Mr. Yasir Janjua, his senior analyst. Mr. Janjua, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. We're also honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar. He's expert foreign affairs. Dr. Waqas, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Mr. Janjua. These revelations, what do you think of these revelations? How bigger a blot this particular thing is for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who happens to be the Prime Minister of the so-called largest democracy?
Well, Jawad, thank you very much. This is a very, very interesting revelation, but it comes as a no-brainer. We all know before, and back then also, we knew it, and we were trying to tell the world, look, Narendra Modi, if you see the trajectory, when he became the Prime Minister in 2014, he had no unifying slogan to rally the Indian population and get them to vote for him. There was nothing unifying among the Indians. So anti-Pakistan bashing is the only slogan the Indians have in their elections. You compare Pakistan, on the contrary, in the Pakistani elections, we don't talk about India or whatever, there are things that we discuss among ourselves. But to get the vote from the Indian Hindu, fundamentalist Hindus, the right-wing Hindus, this is the most easiest thing for anyone to cash on to Pakistan bashing. So in 2014 he did this, and in 2019 this was a very well carefully orchestrated plan by Narendra Modi to get the sympathies of Indian voters. We all were saying, the government of Pakistan, the Pakistani armed forces were saying, well, how is it possible that just in minutes after the attack, have they come to know that it's Pakistan which is involved? If they knew that very well, then it means they were negligent, that they knew it was Pakistan and they couldn't stop it. So it was not Pakistan, they already planned it, that they have to blame Pakistan. And some people even go on to say, he sacrificed, he butchered his own people just for his political agenda. And this is no brainer that Narendra Modi has been doing this anti-Pakistan bashing to get people to vote for him. Now,
Mr. Janjua, please hold your thought over there once. We can understand a certain political party trying to get that electoral benefit in the elections by bashing an adversary. To an extent, it is very much understandable, but going to an extent of orchestrating such a huge attack and getting your own soldiers killed, the 44 of them, and then right away, without any substantial evidence and any sort of concrete proof, you right away put the blame on Pakistan. What does that depict actually?
See, as I said to you, for his agenda or for BJP's agenda, killing 44 people is not a big thing. They see the bigger picture, that they will rule the country, they will become the prime minister of the country. So getting 44 people butchered was in their grand scheme of events was not a big sacrifice to make. Why would they be bothered? Why would they be bothered if 44 people are killed? The question is, I and you must appreciate somebody from within their ranks who has stood up, at least even after a few years, to say what is the truth. That Narendra Modi was complicit, Ajit Doval was complicit, and they were stopping him, and now he spilled the beans. And you will find, and I was telling somebody today, Indians would call me on Indian television every now and then when there is something, they have a very, very small incident to now they're quiet. I have been reaching out to them today, where are you guys? Because the Indians know it, that the guy has told what is actually the fact. We were saying it back then. Last year when there was attack on a Srinagar air base, a drone attack on Srinagar air base, Indians were quick to say, oh, the Pakistanis have done it. And I was again on a program and I said to one of their journalists was opposing me. And I said to them, well, if it's Pakistan, then you people are completely negligent and incapable of your defense. That somebody can go as far as Srinagar and do this. So if an attack on CRPF is happening and Pakistan is, for example, if Pakistan is doing it, that means they are not capable enough. And they've yet placed 900,000 people in Kashmir, yet they can't control. Because the population of Kashmir, the uprising in Kashmir, it has stood up against those arms and they continue retaliating against this oppression. For them it was easy to say it was Pakistan. Now for us, what I was about to say is, for us the responsibility is we should take this dossier out to the international community.
I'll come to that point later in the show. Dr. Kausar, what's your understanding of these revelations? The Foreign Office says once again Pakistan's stance has been vindicated.
Thank you first of all for having me on your show. I mean, I see it from another perspective, that how Kashmir has been actually I must say, the victim of Indian politics, complex and quite dangerous politics, particularly when it comes to Pulwama. See, the way these incidents unfolded, and if we can reflect back and see that how the entire political narrative was built, and then how this pretext was used to muster and bring the armies, countries like Pakistan, India with nuclear power, they were almost on the brink of the war. So we need to understand how BJP's politics of particularly nationalism and religion is actually showing its manifestation, particularly in these areas. See, the fundamentally that we need to understand is that how this attack has benefited the political agenda of BJP, and the question arises that to what extent such party can go to win the election, that it can stake the future of billions and millions and billions of people in the entire region. This is very dangerous, I guess. For a political party ruling a big country, a bigger economy, for that instance, it's quite dangerous. I mean, of course, from the beginning we have been studying, we've been reading and observing that they have an imagination of India which is very much homogeneous. Should not be a multicultural society. That is, of course, they have been trying to do that. But of course, if it remains within, that's a problem of such politics of divide and hate, that it doesn't stop over there. It never sees the boundaries, actually. So you see how it has a spillover effect towards Kashmir, and particularly in the region that we see. It is quite dangerous. I mean, the revelation, I mean, by the ex-governor then, I mean, it also gives us understanding that how ignorant, he used the word particularly about his prime minister, that how ignorant is he about the Kashmir thing, because he was totally blinded by his own politics and political gains. So I guess this is quite dangerous on the regional side, of course, and particularly for the India as well. I mean, you must see one thing, that how the Kashmiris, particularly the entire case of Jammu and Kashmir and how it was portrayed. I mean, India has a strong media, there is no denial on that. But of course, at one point of time, you have to see that you have to be politically asking the politically correct question to the people. This didn't happen. So this is a big revelation. I guess in coming days, you will see that many people speaking up that what Indian government, particularly BJP, has made of India. Of course, there's internal hate. Of course, they're trying to homogenize India. Of course, they are not very pro-diversity and all that. But the impact on the region, regional peace, particularly on Kashmir, if you see the events followed by that, I mean, doing away with all these Kashmir special status and you know, then putting people under repression, and then you see that how the political dissent is compromised, and it's totally political space was squeezed, and until now it is there. So this also raises the question that how international community now responds to this important question.
What is the dynamics of such type of politics that put your own people at risk by bringing another war in your nation and the other nation on the brink of war?
See, the problem with such politics is that it's easy to divide people on certain communal lines. It sells. I mean, this is something, I mean, the countries like India particularly, which is quite diverse, and if you play the politics of religion, if you play the politics of exclusive nationalism, that is easy to sell, and that's what BJP has done in past. The problem with such politics is that you have to feed and sustain that constituency then, and this is here the problem comes once you imagine and visualize yourself to be a country with larger economy and democracy and all that. You can't sustain. I mean, it's a paradox. You can't do that. That's what exactly is happening now. You have seen the lynching of people. You have seen the people getting killed in front of live TV coverage. And this is sad. This is not something is encouraging. That's the problem that BJP is facing. Now you have to multiply that hate, you have to multiply that agenda to win the next elections, and you have to do something bigger than that, because your constituency is now fed, prepared and brought on those lines, and that actually is demanding that divisive politics, particularly in the context of India. That is something very dangerous for the region, and you can't afford to do that, given the condition that you have a dispute, a very complex dispute of Jammu and Kashmir, and that has to be resolved. Doing away with these 370 and all doesn't give a political answer to a very political question. So I guess this is a test case for future for the entire region, that how such politics can sustain. And the other problem is it is very difficult to engage with such government, actually. A government which has a very, very exclusive agenda of not regional cooperation or settlement, because your entire edifice is built on the politics of divide. So it's very difficult for even countries like Pakistan, even when the West says, the other says that you have to dialogue, but you have to dialogue and negotiate with the people, those who have at least semblance of peace, and trying to come and negotiate on certain minimum common grounds. That is not there still. So that's a very challenging situation.
Right. Mr. Janjua, how dangerous it is for the people, even for that very vote bank for which this divisive politics is being played by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his party?
See, it is very dangerous, and in India, unfortunately, as the other participant was saying, it is almost becoming one-way traffic. You either have to be Hindu or you can't exist in India. And I can tell you with my personal experience, I am doing a consultancy work in Middle East nowadays. I come across Indian Muslims and some Kashmiris. They say we are living in a state of fear. They can't exist there. This is that kind of situation. And Indian propaganda machinery, if I want to come back to this part, Indian propaganda machinery is so strong. if I'm not wrong, they I think allocated $20 million, and you remember the case of European Disinfo Lab when all those fake information factories in Belgium and elsewhere were unearthed. So Indians have been doing this all along. To cover up their actions, they have a very strong propaganda machine, very strong media, which propagates, because there are more than 1 billion people. So unfortunately, unless we counter them with strong evidence, like what we did in case of Balochistan, where we gave the dossier to the United Nations and other international diplomats, that's the kind of thing we have to do to counter and show the world what the actual democracy in India looks like and what their so-called democratic Prime Minister Narendra Modi is actually doing. I mean, who doesn't know he's the butcher of Gujarat? Who doesn't know that he was denied an American visa before he became the Prime Minister? These are on the table. However, now because of economic compulsions and trade compulsions, the international community wants to deal with them because they can't afford to ignore such a huge economy.
But that trade and economic activities still can go on even if Narendra Modi is not the Prime Minister anymore.
I mean, everything was going on in the times of Indian National Congress. When I look back now, I think if we have to deal with an adversary, I think Indian National Congress would be a much better adversary to deal with.
Why Modi seems to be indispensable then?
See, as I said, he's clashed on the idea that in order to gain the sympathies of that hardcore, fundamentalist, right-wing
That's
Hindu
the local
voter.
factor. What about the international community, the major powers?
Well, the international community
doesn't necessarily have to be at the helm. There are other parties who could take up the charge, and they could also.
Yeah, but the international community cannot influence the electoral process in India. So they can only sit back and see what's happening in India. They can't influence the electoral process. So unfortunately, even if we keep saying, and the world community keeps saying what India, I mean, as I said, he was not even given the American visa, and yet he became the Prime Minister. And when he became the Prime Minister, Americans were forced to welcome him to the US, because now he was the Prime Minister of second largest populated country in the world. So the reality on ground is, because of their economy, people can't ignore him. However, what we can continue doing is keep exposing what he is.
Let me take Dr. Kausar's take on this. Shouldn't it be an eye-opener for even that very vote bank for which this divisive politics the Prime Minister had been playing?
See, that's an interesting question, that whether it works. Of course, this is quite, eye-opening, because if you see his electoral campaign, he's been displaying all the photographs of those dead soldiers, particularly during election campaign, talking a lot about them.
So after these revelations,
yes,
that is exactly the question.
Yes.
When the former governor says that when he raised this issue of incompetence and carelessness of CPRF, as well as the Home Ministry of India also, so when they are complacent and they are complicit to this, and they are incompetent enough to even save their own soldiers and not provide them with whatever the demand at that time was, so shouldn't it be an eye-opener for the
Ideally it should be, of course. This is a big revelation, but my point is that we also need to see how the issue is portrayed and projected in Indian society particularly. We know there's a corporate media, we know the media with a lot of interest, we know they've been speaking, and they've been very exclusive. I mean, from past couple of years, I mean, there have been a lot of writings on that, particularly that how Indian media has evolved, particularly in the BJP's era. So a lot depends how their society and media and other give the projection particularly. We have seen that there's been a lot of criticism that BJP has heavily and deeply invested in the media as well, and all the business and all the communities particularly have been siding with the BJP from the past years. Importantly, see, if we see the reports of all the international democratic organizations telling about the freedom of speech and level of democracy in any country, we've seen that there's a continuous gradual decline in India, particularly when it comes to the freedom, democracy and all that. With that decline, of course, not necessarily its overall society, but of course your institutions, particularly civil society and media, also has been impacted. And this we have seen that the level of dissent that in India particularly, we've seen that BJP has actually literally reduced spaces for them as well. So the fundamental question is how their own media, particularly their own intellectuals, those having voices in the society, how do they react and respond to this? And if it is covered up like taken up by the strong media by creating certain tilt, I mean, it won't have that much effect. The problem with that constituency, particularly if you read that BJP's constituency, I mean, over the period of time, if you see, they have been demolishing a lot of Muslim heritage, let's suppose. or demolishing any heritage is wrong. But what was the pretext? The pretext was that you want to bring, Hinduize the entire landscape. So I guess it is not easy to convince that constituency, because that is fed on the lines which are very hard, and which are actually such leaders, particularly having a religious inclination, bringing religion in politics, and a very sort of exclusive understanding of religion. It's very difficult to get rid of them. That's why I said it's for India, it's not the Hindu politics, it's the India politics that can work. So that's a very difficult task for their own society, that how to come out of those shackles and understand how this exclusive politics is impacting their life particularly.
And
Right. I'll come back to you, Mr. Janjua. We are joined by another participant, Mr. Sardar Amjad Yousaf. On the phone line, he is the Executive Director, Kashmir Institute of International Relations. Mr. Sardar Amjad Yousaf, thank you very much for joining in at PTV World's Views on News. Now, these revelations by former governor of IIOJK, how do you see them? Shouldn't these revelations be an eye-opener even for that very vote bank for which this divisive politics by BJP and Prime Minister Narendra Modi had been played over the years now?
Thank you very much. I think if I have gone through this interview, and in my point of view, if you see about this Pulwama, there are some facts which needs to be unfolded. Like the CRP asked the central government to provide an aeroplane for the transportation of these forces. They did not provided the aeroplane. The second, there were 7, 8 link roads which were approaching this main road. And normally when there is a convoy...
Right, Mr. Yousaf, I seek your pardon for the interruption. I'll have to take a short break. Welcome back to Views on News. We are discussing the shocking revelations by former governor of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir about the Pulwama attack. We are joined in the studio by Mr. Yasir Janjua. He is senior analyst, and Dr. Waqas Kausar, expert foreign affairs. Now, Mr. Janjua, before going on the break, you were also mentioning, as Dr. Kausar was also mentioning, the responsibility of the Indian media. And don't you think it's an utter dishonesty with the public at large when they're not highlighting these revelations? As this is not what I am saying. This has been said by the president of the Congress Party's youth wing. He has highlighted the silence of the nationalist Indian media channels. Now he's asking that how many India channels are taking this particular issue up for discussion.
You will find that none of the Indian media channels is talking about it. As I was telling you in the break, otherwise they would call me 2 times a day to come on a program when they have something to bash Pakistan. Now when they are caught with their pants down, they're all quiet about it. And they are in habit, as I was telling you, they're in habit. When they supposedly did that Balakot strike, surgical strike, and they killed a few crows and they shot down some trees, so they would say, oh, we've killed terrorists and terrorists. In actual, Pakistan actually took the ambassadors of foreign countries there and showed them what it was. But the Indian media, in the exuberance, they would tell the world, oh, we've killed terrorists inside Pakistan territory. They shot down their own helicopter after the day of the Abhinandan case, and they said, we've shot down a Pakistani plane. And there were 7, 8 Indian soldiers who got killed there. But the Indian media was telling the world, look, we've shot down a Pakistani plane. Because it's such a huge population, the media is so strong, and however, what we think that they are independent, they are not independent. They are also towing the BJP government line. Why? As you were talking about it, we were all talking about it, because it's all about politics. They have now come to understand. Why do you think Indian National Congress has been marginalized?
So isn't it about fascism also? We have seen the kind of crackdown against BBC also.
It is.
In the recent past.
They've tried to close down the offices of BBC. They've raided them. It's all fascist. And Hindutva agenda is all about fascism. If you read through the history of BJP and the origins, it's all fascist ideology. So Narendra Modi is doing nothing different than the ideology he's been brought up with or he's been groomed with. He is someone who actually admitted his role in 1971 in East Pakistan, openly admitted it. And today is the Prime Minister of the country. So when he tells his governor to hush up the situation in about this incident in Pulwama. What does it tell you? It is just before the elections, the 2019 election, and you see the kind of majority he came back with. So it was all planned. Ajit Doval, his intentions have not been hidden. He's been in the public saying his only agenda is Pakistan bashing, rightly or wrongly. And in most cases you find they have nothing to say about it. So
Dr. Kausar, isn't it utter dishonesty with the public? And when it comes to the role and the responsibility of independent media, this particular question raised by the president of the Congress Party Youth Wing, that how many channels are taking up this particular issue?
See, of course, it is quite disappointing. I mean, and that's the sad trend that we are witnessing, that how the idea of free, independent, responsible media, that actually in a democracy, that how it has fizzled out over the period of time, and how the corporate interest particularly overpowered these very value system of reporting and giving unbiased and very objective news. And that's the big challenge for for their society, particularly now in the case, particularly when the incident like Pulwama and all that happened. I mean, I was really sad to see if a country's prime minister is doing its election campaign on the dead bodies of the people. This is not very encouraging.
Dead bodies of his own people.
His own people particularly, and it's not a very encouraging sign, particularly for a democracy, a country that try to become something, big in political and economic scenario of the world. So I guess this is an indication that there is something seriously wrong in the body politics of the entire country.
So perhaps the media, the channels that we are talking about, perhaps are very much afraid of kind of crackdown that could be launched against them also, as we have seen in the case of BBC also.
See, because you also see about the amnesty, you also see the international bodies talking about Kashmir, particularly in human rights as well, the way that they stifled all these things and the way the dissent was crushed. I mean, this is an example. I mean, they have set the example for the people. The problem is, for the short term, you can do that. But what I said, in their own society, of course, it's a multi-ethnic, multicultural society. For the long term, it's very difficult to sustain it, because you're also hollowing out your own society. You're also hollowing out the larger chunk of your society. And we have witnessed protest in those areas which we didn't read or heard since long. But it's happening within India particularly. Why is it so? That because, I mean, the politics in a country, in any country, I mean, it is of course the combination of different value system, ethos and all these things. If you conduct and carry out a politics which is very exclusive, the problem again I would say is that how in long term would you sustain it? One. Second, of course people react and respond. There is also a third now, factor, another factor of social media, particularly when we see that. Of course it is, once you have such sort of constituency.
But we have seen the examples of digital hegemonism also.
No, because
Indian authorities forcing Twitter and YouTube to block the sharing of the clips.
So this is never encouraging. I must tell you one thing. This I mean, for a short term it might benefit BJP's government, but how it is helping India society, I don't think so. Because that's why I'm saying that now you are seeing certain symptoms of it, certain consequences of it, how the internally politics has become so divided and the country has become so divided. The problem, see, the fundamental is whatever their government is doing, it's their choice. Whatever the people are thinking, it's their choice. I'm more concerned about the issue of Jammu and Kashmir particularly. Like, let's suppose as a state subject, the fundamental question is that your own politics is directly impacting the lives of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. That you have to be mindful of that. It should not be the victim of your politics.
Now, when the former governor of ExIIOJK says that Prime Minister is ill-informed and ignorant about Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, what does that mean? And does it actually establish the fact that by revoking the Article 370 and snatching that very autonomy as per the Indian constitution itself, that was a strategic blunder?
See, this also vindicates one very important point when people were saying that the doing away with 370 has nothing to do with the prosperity, what they claim actually, and the prosperity and economic empowerment, all that of Kashmir. It didn't happen particularly. And now when he's saying that he's ignorant, doesn't know much about Kashmir, because for them the land was important. It's not about the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So we say that the primacy should be given to the people's voices. That's fundamentally the important thing. The politics over there, particularly over Kashmir, has been that how they can, control the very land, the geography of the people, and we have seen that. The delimitation thing, we have seen that. The problem is if it, after so long, I mean 3-4 years, has passed, did BJP able to restore the political system? The time has proven that, and what the governor was saying, exactly that the BJP had no long-term plan for Kashmiri's political empowerment. It could never, because in a situation when you don't have people with you, you can't do much more things except the administrative things.
Point well taken, Dr. Waqas. So unfortunately, we're short of time. I'll have to take some view from Mr. Janjua also. As you already mentioned, that there is someone now who has mustered that courage to spill the beans. What about his safety and personal security also?
I think he's still trying to give a escape route to the Indian Prime Minister when he says the Prime Minister was ill-informed. I tend to disagree with that. I think Prime Minister was in the front seat, was in the driving seat, driving that policy of Pakistan bashing.
About Kashmir.
Well, ill-informed about Kashmir, that's his opinion.
Not about that particular attack.
My take on it is Ajit Doval and Narendra Modi were driving that policy of Pakistan bashing and driving the policy of marginalizing the Kashmiris. 370 revoking was all done at the behest of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Ajit Doval. So they can't be absolved that they were ill-informed. They were very much informed, and all these things were happening at their behest. As he was saying, they were doing politics of the dead bodies. You will never find, no matter what is going on in Pakistan, you can't, in the last 75 years, you can't give one incident where Pakistan has done politics or Pakistani political party has done politics over dead bodies. But they can do it. BJP can do it. And that's why I was saying, if you compare the two devils, I think Indian National Congress was a much better party, much more democratic party than these right-wing parties. And as you were saying, what is going to be the fate of the channels? They all know it, that BJP has those extremist activists out on the streets. They can ransack the television stations. So they are also worried about their safety. Few months ago, what was happening in the streets of Delhi with the Muslim communities, it's not hidden from anybody. So the reality is the channels also want to strive.
One last quick question. How do you see this brutal murder of a former Muslim MP and his brother on live TV, which a politician, Mahua Moitra, has said that she can even believe that BJP got the shooting done to deflect the attention from Satyapal's interview? Can they go to that extent also?
If you ask my personal opinion, I can't connect the two things together. This could be a personal rivalry between the shooter and the deceased politician and his brother. They came in the garb of journalists and they killed him.
But they were chanting at the same time the Hindu nationalist slogans also.
It could be
Mr.
possible.
Asaduddin Owaisi has also said that
I mean,
UP is
if
being
you
done.
ask me, killing of, although one life is very important, but killing of two people cannot dictate a national policy. This revelation about Pulwama speaks of the national policy. Killing of two people can, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but in my
your
opinion.
take.
Yes, just on this idea of ill-informed when it comes to Modi. I mean, see, yes.
Ill-informed about the dynamics of
Kashmiri
IIOJK,
politics particularly,
right.
Because you see, if they have understood the nuances of that politics, the struggle, the history, the context, the politics of that, they would not have gone to that extent where they have to cage almost all the population and all the sections, vibrant section of the society. This speaks, because have they understood that, there must have been a long-term plan of that, doing away with that. There is still a stalemate, there is a status quo, and its suppression is over there, civil liberties are compromised. So this, of course, is telling us that they actually didn't have any plan, just to doing away with that, getting political might, clout, and their constituency, and that's it.
Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar, expert foreign affairs, thank you very much for being with us on the show. Mr. Yasir Janjua, senior analyst, thank you very much for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. I'll conclude the show with a quote from Pakistan's Foreign Office, which says, "We hope that the international community would take cognizance of the latest revelations and see through India's propaganda campaign against Pakistan, driven by selfish political considerations and based on lies and deceit." With that, we come to the end of today's show. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.